Guys One Cup!
It is Monday, the 1st of June, a pinch and a punch, the first of the month. This is Two Guys, One Cup, an AFL adjacent podcast. My name is Charlie Clausen, and in my continuing efforts to move us away from the stench of old man media to young cool guy media, we have Cheets from Type Media joining us. How are you, mate?
Young cool guy media. I like that intro.
Yeah.
That's very good. Pleasure to be here. This is awesome.
We were just talking before we started about one of our favourite, probably now deleted moments from Fox Footy, which was the attempt by Gary Lyon, Nathan Buckley, and Jordan Lewis to stitch up Jono Brown with so what were they singing? Been Around the World, and I can't find my baby.
It was the funniest thing. As I do, I was always tuning in to the pre-game coverage to see if there was any zingers in there for a game edit, and I just saw this, and I'm like, what's going on here? What is happening? They tried to stitch up Brownie, and I thought, I'm like, I'll put this video out, and I go, oh man, it just went crazy. And then you guys talked about it in your potty, and that's how I came across you guys.
Yeah, right.
Your-in-law was like, hey, I heard your name get dropped in this. So that's the story.
You tipped me off to it. Then I found the clip online, and then we did a whole episode on it. It was right in our areas, what we like to talk about. But the funny thing about it was, so it was Jordan Lewis, Nathan Buckley, and Gary Lyon trying to stitch up Jono Brown because he'd flown over to interview Conor McGregor for the UFC or something like that. Now trying to say, you're in love with Conor McGregor, you're traveling around the world to see your baby, ha, ha, ha. So then they do this song and dance number that just immediately falls apart. But the great bit about it is Jordan Lewis is clearly the least committed. And so he's like barely mouthing the words, and he's sort of just edging.
His fingers, maybe? That's what he thought.
But doing these little sort of side steps out of frame, he wants to get out of there as soon as possible. And after we did that episode, a couple of weeks later, someone emailed us who used to work at the Hawks in the media department and said, oh, listen, I once made the mistake of asking Jordan Lewis when he was at the Hawks to do some kind of, fan interaction kind of thing for social media, or asked him to name his favorite film or something. He is not a guy who's into these kind of like soft moments, soft media moments. And so you could just see it live on air because his soul leaving his body. Yeah.
They're a bit, the old heads at Hawthorn are a bit like that. Jack Gunston, you see him try to shoo away the social media person as quick as possible.
Well, that makes sense. Jack Gunston's 70 years old. He doesn't even know what a mobile phone is.
Probably not too far away from Jordan Lewis. That's what's crazy. But he's not a big social media person. But it's hilarious to think that Jordan Lewis, he did not want any part of it. You had Bucks, I think, getting into it.
Bucks did a real good effort. I think Bucks, there's a few of these retired players who I'm really impressed with their commitment to like the more showbiz elements. Like Nick Revolt and Nathan Buckley, when they're asked to do a sketch, when they're asked to play a character, what was that comedy show they had for a couple of seasons last year? What was it called? Was it? Oh my God. It's completely dropped out of my mind. But was it like the Fifth Quarter or something? You know what I'm talking about? It's like
quite some time ago, wasn't it? Was that? Yeah, I think it was like the
that was years ago. But what was the one that was on recently that Nathan Buckley and Nick Revolt were on?
Oh yeah, it's with
they would do sketches
on Fox. Yeah, and he did. I used to be.
we've immediately
So I know the guy that wrote for that. He was that was great, and he said Nathan was an absolute legend to work with because he didn't care. And some of the stuff that they had written to him was like they had AA meetings where they're talking about it's like, I talk about myself a little too much, and they're like self-deprecating. It was amazing, and he said Nathan, you could do anything, and he was so good about it.
Yeah, so it's and the two players, like when they're on the field, like Nick Revolt and Nathan Buckley, who were so serious and so driven and so alpha and, type A personalities.
Yeah.
To sort of see them embrace this side of their personality that's like goofier. Like when Revolt did his Fight MND as Freddie Mercury, and he really committed to it. It's just like, oh, okay, it's a different side to these guys.
I mean, I feel like he's always had it. If you've seen the St Kilda song when he does the when the saints, that is meme gold for me. That one that comes around at least once a year, and if he's willing to do that while he's still playing, then he's game for anything.
Mate, that's why we love him at the Saints. He would do I think that was just so they could win free flights for an end of season trip or something. So it's like he was our captain in more ways than one. I wanted to ask you about like your the way you work and the way you come up with this clip. So clearly you have like an archive of sort of some go-tos, like you said, like the Nick Revolt one is a go-to. Are you constantly like when sort of like trends take off, or you see stuff online, or you're watching a film. Are you in that mode where you're half thinking how could this work in an edit later on?
Yeah, of course. I think like when I was younger, what happened was I just grew up with TV. So I'm not exactly. I'm in between old man media and this new media. I'm a middle-aged man media.
Millennial media.
Well, anyway, yeah. So I grew up watching, TV. We didn't have streaming and anything like that. And you used to get like The Simpsons, and you get Rove, and you get all this crap. And you didn't get to choose your movie you watch. You just watched it, like whatever. It is
Mm,
what it is, and it's sometimes stuck watching crappy movies, but there's some really good moments. So, like my brain, I just work in references a lot of the
yeah.
time. So me and my brother, when we talk, I mean, I wasn't born in Australia, so when we came here, like, feel like the way we assimilate was through TV. It's kind of like The Simpsons when they hug the TV.
Yeah.
It's kind of
But
like that's what me and my brother was.
but that makes sense, like, because The Simpsons is so referential. Like, that is a lot of
Hmm.
what they did, was like referencing movies and TVs. Like, when they started doing that in the early
Yeah,
90s, like, I'm old enough to remember when The Simpsons, I remember watching the first episode of The Simpsons. Like, it was it was event television. Like, we all gathered
great.
around at a neighbor's place to watch because we'd heard about this show that had knocked off The Cosby Show. It must be good.
Yeah.
And that was the only bad thing to do at The Cosby Show, as far as I'm aware.
At the time, little did you know.
Yeah. But there was kids in my school who, probably much like you, were either had recently moved to Australia or even arrived at the school, and the way that they integrated was to quote The Simpsons. Like, it became
Yeah,
this kind of shorthand. Like, if you weren't good at sport but you could quote The Simpsons, you're fine. Looks like you
yeah,
did both, so you were sweet,
yeah.
right?
I don't know about the sports thing, but yeah, well, the quote in the Simpsons thing was a big one, and yeah, look, it was just one of those things where, like, you didn't even have much of a choice. You'd play sport when you're younger, to fit in, and then obviously you watch a lot of TV, and then you go in there and you speak to your mates about what happened. And the way me and my brother communicated was through just references, and I think this is an element of nostalgia we just love, and we can kind of what we did before I started doing all this content stuff was like. We'd watch footy or we'd watch cricket or whatever sport was on, and what we'd find is there'd be storylines and
Yes.
narratives, and there'd be little battles and everything like that. And then, sorry, is my internet connection all good? It's just
Yeah,
got
you
a little
seem to
message
be.
saying that. We're all good.
Well,
We are
oh, well.
live. But yeah, so like we'd always reference like things that we'd seen on TV to be like, oh, that happened. For example, someone got dacked. Will be like, oh, that's like when Martin got dacked in that episode or whatever. Um, and yeah, obviously from my love of sport, I realized this was happening quite frequently in sport. So I'm like, hey, why don't I during COVID times? I'm like, why don't I create a page for this? And then let it run wild. And here we are today. It's just kind of gone crazy to the point where I'm like, I have to continue to keep updating all like my whole catalog. So I've got a
Yeah.
folder. Like it's just hard. There's only so much your brain can take in to be like, oh, I remember this. And I don't like going back to the well with some of these scenes. Like, obviously there's some scenes where it's just like it fits perfectly, but you've used it too many times. So
Yeah, it's the guy from Get Out crying with it wearing a
yeah,
beanie
yeah,
or something
exactly.
like
And I've
that.
done it, and I've done it a lot. And like you realize that sometimes people forget, but it's like for me, I'm not like I used it 3 weeks ago, and I'm like I don't want to really do that again. So I have
Yeah.
like folders, and I have a process now, which I go, okay, I'll use that this many times. Let's do something else.
Yeah. I mean, it's brilliant. Like, it's funny. Will and I probably are squarely old man media, and we started this 10 years ago. And we thought it was enough just to do a segment on the show would say, hey, which Simpsons character does each coach most fit? That was like,
Yeah, that's good.
and then it's like, oh yeah, move with the modern times. But then the other thing is we'd always talk about wrestling, like how wrestling and football
Mm,
coincide. Because you mentioned it before, but how I get into any sport, and to be honest, like I only really follow like Aussie rules and cricket. They're the only two things I really get into. But then if I sit down and watch a sport I'm not familiar with, the thing I'll say to my friends is, what's the storyline? Like,
yeah,
what's the history between these teams? Who's the best player? Has he come from another club? Whatever it is. And that's how you get into it. And like, I am all for bringing more of that sort of WWE like
yeah.
storylines into like what they're doing with Wolfie
Yeah, right.
time at the moment.
Yeah, it's and that's what it is. So I grew up obviously like watching Simpsons, but wrestling was a big part of it as well. We were watching stuff that we shouldn't have been watching, but it's the only way my old man could just control two boys where it's just like we just need to make sure they just chill out, don't go
Yeah.
nuts. So you know what we'll do? we put WWF wrestling on, which had all sorts of stuff that I shouldn't have been watching. But here I am today, and I'm okay. So, but like, yeah, the wrestling stuff was amazing because it was just theater, and you
Yes.
can kind of the storylines there. You can kind of go, hey, this is the same kind of stuff happening in the footy world, but obviously
Yeah.
not to that extremes. And find that connection, and then it just works, like you said, Wolfie time, and it goes,
Yeah.
okay, this is the Undertaker, like that gong going off, and all of a sudden they come to life, and it's like, yep. And then what's funny is that people can go, that's bang on. I remember watching this as a kid, and I go, there's this weird parallels between the two.
Yeah, it's funny too. Like, and with Freo coming good, like I have. Look, as a Saints fan, you've got to invest in other teams a fair bit because more often than not, the season's going to slip away, and you need to stay engaged.
You need
Yeah.
to reinvest. Is the most
Well, you
Saints
just
thing I've heard.
oh, mate, like what happened on like, and this is the other thing about your team getting absolutely pumped on a Thursday night is you've got all weekend to listen to everyone tell you how shit you are. It's like
Yeah.
every footy show. It's like, yeah, we get it, but it's look. I've come to terms with being a Saints fan. Like I've been to every grand final that we haven't won. I've been a member for longer than I can remember. I was going to Moorabbin, like, when I was 8 or 9 years old. And when you only know one way, like I can't, in the Saints chat I have, we sort of talk about what would it be like to see us win a flag, and none of us can conceive of it. Like it just does, like it's impossible. And I wonder if sometimes maybe we're the problem. Like, is it maybe our collective lack of belief as fans that limits the club? I don't know.
Maybe just putting out the wrong energy into the universe to be like,
Well, you
no,
you said in your edit on Thursday, it's like, is this club cursed? And it's like, if we have asked ourselves that question so many times because
blows my mind. It blows my mind that Geelong can go out there, win a premiership every decade, and then here you've got St Kilda this long, and it's not even that. St Kilda's had some good teams in the past, and like you just go, how has this not happened? But
it's not just that it's not just that we've had good teams and lost. It's the it's the bizarre circumstances in which we have lost. Like Tom Hawkins hitting the post in 2009, and then they bring in goal line technology. The draw against the Pies, and then they outlaw draws after that. And if they'd paid extra time, we probably would have won that one. So it's just like
sometimes the way the ball bounces as well, the toe poke.
Oh, the way the ball bounces, or a toe poke, all this kind of, it's the sliding doors of it. But I mean, as a friend of mine said, like if we do eventually see the Saints win a flag, like we talk about, like, oh, we're just going to party for a week, and he's like, yeah, but then I'm going to burn my membership and forget this nightmare ever
Yeah,
again.
that's true. I think to go through the pain and to win a premiership, it'd be worth, like, I reckon that's better than 3 premierships that Geelong would win. Like, you know what I mean?
I've seen it. I've seen it with Tigers fans. I've seen it with Bees fans. Like, I've seen all my friends. I mean, the reason Will and I started this fucking podcast is because we both barracked for teams that had one flag, and then in the very first year of doing this podcast, the Bulldogs get their second flag. So even the guy that like
was insane. Yeah. See, I'm from the West, right? And I'll go for Collingwood, and how my partner goes to the Bulldogs, but I genuinely felt like a Bulldog supporter that year. And I think that's the same thing that'll happen with St Kilda eventually, is when St Kilda have that run, and it'll be a fairy tale run. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. They could be on top of the ladder. It's still, they'll still be the underdog going into that. And I feel like everyone will get behind the Saints.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if you couldn't get, if us playing Collingwood in the grand final, like you couldn't have a bigger David and Goliath, and we couldn't get it done then. Like that, we had the entire country behind us when we were playing the Pies, and we couldn't get it done. But it's also just like I've had to recalibrate why I love football, and I don't know if you can identify with this, but there's reasons now. I just generally love the game of Aussie rules, and I know this year has been challenging to still love it, and there's been some fuckery going on with the fixture. It's been to be honest, like this year more than any other year I can remember, I'm like, I'm just not vibing with it this year. Like it was harder. It was just that odd staggered start. It was harder to get into. The stand rule, I think, just really frustrated people. It's those unnecessary moments in games where an umpire, and I don't blame the umpires. Can you imagine? Like, have you ever umpired a game of football?
No, I used to. So before, like when I was at uni, I used to umpire futsal, and that was already hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
so imagine umpiring this freaking game where Like
It's so
there,
hard.
we
Ridiculous.
must be the only sport, like professional sport in the world too, where we have rules based on intention. Oh, I think you
Yeah.
deliberately took that across the line. It's
There's
like
so
a
much
court of
open
law takes
interpretation,
months to
right? Yeah.
establish motive. Like it's
And the
insane.
umpires aren't paid full time, so that's another
Yeah,
thing. So you've got this game full of rules where it's like a lot of in the grey area. You're not sure. It's open to interpretation,
yeah,
and they're not full time, which is crazy because I feel like too you have to practice your decision making, and then a lot of these come down to the circumstance. Really, what's happening there? Like it blows my mind how much pressure we put on umpires as a code. And
yeah,
I think when people start blaming umpires, I feel real bad for them because I'm like, they're not the one writing the rules. They're not the one coming out making a statement. I said, like in the NBA, I had this on the podcast yesterday. In the NBA, what happens is they usually have an umpire expert to explain calls
mm,
while the game's happening. So if there's like a technical foul or if there's a flagrant foul, you have an ex-umpire that comes on and explains why this has happened. I
yeah,
feel like if the AFL had that, like let's say you're watching on Channel 7 and it
mm,
comes on and Razor goes,
yeah,
this is why it happened. I don't think he'd even be able to explain it properly because we're all in limbo. We don't know
yeah.
what's happened. Like you can argue each way. Sometimes it's
Well,
dropping the ball and you're like, was there prior? What's going on?
yeah, that Nick Watson play on call was a classic example because I've seen like people arguing both sides of it, and I'm like, it just looks like a normal approach for a kick. And how often have you seen, everyone brings up the Buddy example of the natural arc or whatever, but did he deviate that significantly? Like,
What
I'd,
again? Natural arc. What do you
yeah.
define as natural arc? I'm gonna run like 50 meters to the side and come around. It's my natural arc. Like what? And this is where I go. I don't think there's any other code, like you said, where it's just make up
So
your own rules.
open to interpretation. Yeah, I mean,
It's
look,
crazy.
but then, like, part of me, like, Will sort of talks about how you gotta, like, that's what makes the game unique as well. Like, rather than, because I think we're one of the only codes in the world that updates the rules every year, right? Like most codes, it's
Yeah.
sort of set in stone. But you sort of got to embrace the chaos of it. Like, I do love that joke. There's been a few people who have done it. This is what AFL looks like to people who don't know the game. And it's just a bunch of people like rolling around on the grass and running around because
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
chaotic.
the best way to describe it, again, I'm going into my references, is when Homer becomes Bart's football coach and he
Yeah.
tries to explain plays, and then all the players are just running around and just like, you just don't know what's going on. It's like, this is what we're doing. And that's literally AFL.
Yeah, which
But
makes it so amazing when, like, you see it executed by a great team. Like when we're like you cut me off before, but I'm going to have to hit it again because I just love
yeah,
this theme
sorry
so
about
much.
that.
This is the old Freo song, the heave ho at
yeah.
the start. This is so much more metal, don't you reckon? Like they should bring this back.
This
Are
is
you on
crazy.
Flag Mantle?
I am now. It's that's really good.
It is good, right?
Every time I think of that, I just think of the Peter Bell era, Paul Hazelby, Peter Bell.
Yeah.
Those real workman type Fremantle players. Toy Cook was one of my favourite players.
Yeah.
Old school. And I love the Fremantle retro tops. I think was undefeated. They're the best things.
Yeah.
So,
And I also
bring it back. I reckon.
I just love too the idea that, like, you talk about storylines, and so you look at the four contending teams right now. You'd say would be what? Hawthorn, Swans, Geelong. Like boring. Freo though, it's like we haven't seen this before, and I genuinely like the makeup of that team. Like you look at that forward line because it's funny after the Saints game where Voss was into Wilkie, a bunch of people were like, oh, he's such a dog and a pest and whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I love it. I
I
love
love
it.
it too.
Like,
The confidence of me just it's the
it's
best.
it's kind of within the rules as well. Like, I know it's kind of annoying, but if you're gonna love your Tom Papleys, you got to love your Patrick Vosses. He's just a bigger version of the forward pocket pest.
Every team's got it. Jack Higgins does the same
Yep.
thing. It's just Paddy Voss is a little bit bigger and he's chest out. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's football. It's why we love it. We can't have these guys being like robots, right? And then you got to have, an antagonist. And Cal Wilkie, like that's a credit to Cal Wilkie because he's been, probably I reckon All-Australian defender. He's close, very
Yeah.
very close. Again,
Yeah.
but yeah,
he's
I'm on board. I'm buying stocks in Freo. They're amazing at the moment.
Yeah, well, it sort of feels like that it's Freo or Sydney are the outstanding teams, but it's also that thing of like what Geelong have done really well over the last God knows, 10, 15 years, is they time their run. So do you want to be like peaking now,
Yeah.
or can they hold this form? Like, sometimes they say you need to have a loss just before finals to kind of get your eye in or just get
Yeah.
grounded again.
Kind of what Brisbane have done in the last couple of years, where they just don't really take the home and away season too seriously. I don't think they finish on top, and then they have this lull period, which everyone thinks they're doing now, and
Yeah.
now they've lost 3 in a row, right? So,
Yeah. So what do you reckon's
um,
going on with the Lions now?
I think it's they played Fremantle, they played Geelong. They're 2 very good sides that were just hungry, and it's probably right. Brisbane are probably just coasting in the moment, but what a year for the wild card. Like, I feel like it
Yes.
gives everyone a bit more of a reprieve to be like, hey, we can still play finals if you finish 10th. So
Yeah.
I still think Brisbane are on their day, probably one of the best teams in the comp. It's just that,
Pound for pound, like you look at
yeah,
that list, it's like there's just talent everywhere.
it's weird. They don't have the same home ground advantage as someone like a Geelong. They almost look worse at the Gabba now than they do when they play away, which is interesting.
That does happen. I remember it happened to the Swans a couple of years ago as well, where they just look
Yeah,
vulnerable at home. I
at
don't
the
know if it's like
SCG.
at the game style or whatever. But
Mm,
it's also that thing about Brisbane is like, are they hungry anymore?
yeah,
Like they're already, sort of talking about moving some players on, like, or, at least Bailey might be going, Lockie Neal might be going. So are they as connected as they have been?
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I always think that we're so quick to jump on. It's the Saints' turn to cop a kicking, but 3 weeks ago, fucking Carlton were getting a kicking. Now I mean, you, you
Yeah.
predicted that Carlton are going to make the 10.
The wild card. I thought footy's such a weird space for the media. Like it just feels like we just, like you said, you just jump on and we just pile on, and I felt like they weren't playing bad. They lost games where they were in front at halftime, and I just thought, yes, they lost, and the way they lost is, when you have a lead,
They
it's
were
always
in every game.
in every game, and it could very easily be, they could have been, 4-5 or whatever it was. And I thought, if they get on a run here, who knows? It's the 10th
Yeah.
10th place team plays finals. And I looked at it this year. This year's the most like even comp that you'd ever find, apart from Essendon. Port
Mm,
Adelaide are in the bottom 4, and they've got a percentage over 100. I don't
yeah.
think that's ever happened. Where there's a bottom 4 team with a percentage over 100.
Yeah, it's funny the way people are like so quick to dismiss Port. You look at their midfield, like Rosie Butters, Horn Francis, that's like a pretty shit hot midfield, and
Yeah,
Georgiades up forward. Like they're not as bad as some teams. Like I think if you're sort of comparing sort of A graders to A graders, I think the Saints probably have as many A graders as Port Adelaide still, but then
I
maybe the drop
yeah.
off is a bit more
I think
steep.
it's the fact they've struggled a little bit with injury. Like Rosie, their captain, he's out for the year. They reckon
Yeah,
getting, he's under some surgery. And then Butters is probably one of the best players in the comp. And then I think what they'll do, Port, is that they'll probably bottom out this year, where they're like, okay, whatever. And then next year they'll come out of nowhere, and everyone will be like, oh my god, how did this
yeah,
team
yeah.
that kind of
That
like
bounce
Adelaide,
back.
yeah, the bounce back. They're the perfect candidate for that because yeah, they just lost to Hawthorn by kick. They beat Geelong. They
Mm,
just lost to Adelaide. It's an interesting competition. I like this because in my time of following the footy, you always have, one or two where you go, yep, they're going to play in a grand final. I just think it's
yeah.
really open at the moment. And there's people talking about Carlton now winning a final. I'm like, hang on a minute, what's going on
Hang
here?
on. You've been on Blue Abroad? Is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
I saw a comparison of Leicester City when they went on that fairy tale run and won the Premier League, and they're like, "Well, this could be like Carlton," and I'm like, "We haven't actually seen that kind of storyline with the footy. We've never
Yeah.
seen, apart from maybe the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are probably the biggest outsiders to win, but I still feel like
Well,
if
Brizzy
there was
didn't
ever, yeah,
Brisbane won it from fifth, right? Or is it
Brisbane won it
fifth or
from fifth,
sixth?
and the funny thing with that was they were, I think, down by around 30 to 40 points in an elimination game to GWS, and they,
Yeah.
Joey Danaher did his thing, and they went on this incredible run. So, but I don't think we've seen something now with the wildcard round. Who knows? We might see something
Yeah.
where a team finishes 10th and plays in a prelim final.
Well, that's the thing about this competition, isn't it? Like, you don't have to be the best team for the year. You just need to be the best team for 5
In at the
weeks.
right
Like, that's
time.
it. Just
Yeah.
leading into the finals and you get a hot hand. And you're right. Like, I mean, everyone was laughing at Adam Kingsley a couple of weeks ago when he's like, oh, we'll be right. And turns out like a
Yeah.
14 goal quarter against the reigning premiers and then
They lost to
smashing.
West Coast
Yeah.
the week before. It's that. Yeah.
A
How do you
week is a
pick it?
long time of footy. Hey?
Exactly. How could you pick it? Like, you would have ruled them out and been like, they're not playing wild card, they're not playing finals, and then all of a sudden now they're like, okay, if they get their players back, they could be a genuine threat.
Well, that at least that one, like you sort of look for logic or reasons why. And the GWS one, I could understand that because of the personnel, like purely for the
Yeah.
personnel. Like they were missing such good players. Um, but then you sort of what you sort of forget, it's not just about the good players coming back and being good. It's the good players coming back then allow your Finn Callahans to
Mm.
then go to the next level. Like we're sort of
Yeah.
seeing, I think we're now sort of seeing the player he is. Like he's just that awesome sort of Bont-esque, big bodied midfielder with pace. Like I'm excited. I want GWS to succeed. There's been a lot of negativity about the Giants this year, especially on this
Yeah.
podcast, because I'm,
Yeah,
I'm,
I'm sure they have. Doggy
well,
supporters
look,
probably hate it.
yeah, well, it's also just it's that there's look, I have a real bias against Sydney. I used to live in Sydney and I love Sydney as a
Right.
team. And then something happened. I went to a game and some Swans supporters were giving me shit, and I was like, I don't like this team anymore. And
Yeah,
so there
that's all it
has been
takes.
a lot of scurrilous info coming my way about the Giants and just how low their numbers are. And I do worry about it because it's a hard market to crack, and they haven't. Like if they'd won a flag in, the period where they've been really good, then maybe that could have brought some more numbers in and stabilized them. But they've just got a raw deal. Like that ground
Yeah.
that they can't play any games at for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. And then being out in Homebush, which is a bit of
Crazy. Yeah.
a wasteland out there anyway. So I do
Yeah.
worry for them. But in terms of actually being a footy club with good footy people in them and good players, then yeah, I think the Giants are awesome.
They've done an incredible job, and they always seem to do things well. Like, the documentary that they released before the season was probably the best one. There was many that seemed all the same,
Just when
but
you
the
thought
the
Liam
Giants
Cameron was the coach who swore the most.
most,
Along
yeah, Adam
comes
Kingsley just
Kingsley.
did. Yeah, I think I watched
Hold my
that, and I
fucking
think
beer is what he said.
yeah, literally, oh my fucking dear. Within the first 10 minutes, we saw Kingsley doing a bench press, um, drinking a protein shake and dropping 15 F-bombs, which is brilliant. It's just like,
Yeah.
great. I actually went through that whole doco and I just kind of was skipping through. I'd watched it and then I'm like, I think I remember how many times he swore and when he swore. And I picked it up. It
Mm.
was like literally, I think 92 F-bombs that he dropped across that. So, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but it is quite a lot when you think about it.
Well, it's also crazy that he's doing that knowing there's cameras there. Like you'd think at some
Yeah.
point, like, when you get mic'd up, you're like, well, maybe I'll just tone it down a bit. So imagine what he's saying when there's no cameras.
Just speaks exclusively in F-bombs. That's it. He's
So how
no,
you feel?
yeah.
How you feeling about the Pies? What is this
Um,
year? You think is this sort of the start of a rebuild? Like,
I call it a gap year.
yeah,
We just kind of like it's one of those ones where I think we've been up for a while now. I think since 2022 we've kind of been up, and that's now 4 years. A bit of an aging list. Needs to regenerate in a way that like Geelong does. We
mm,
don't really go to the draft, and I think we're lucky in a sense where we're a big club. We can attract free agents, and we've kind of gone to that. And then we just need to. And this is going to be testing period for Craig McRae, because how do you go about doing these mini rebuilds? And that's what I like to call them, where you
yeah,
don't really bottom out, and all the good teams seem to do it. Sydney, Geelong, and there's obviously the academy and all these little things that maybe get an extra farm as
yeah,
Geelong would like to do. But this
yeah,
is going to be the period where I'm like, you can go two ways here. We can go, I think, to free agency, get a few players, and then compete again, or some of these older players go, and then we bottom out for quite some period of time. And who knows? I think everyone assumes when you bottom out, you come straight back up, and I don't think that's the case. I think you look at teams like Melbourne, Richmond, Carlton as well.
North,
Like if North, and I think it doesn't matter how Essendon as well. It doesn't matter how big your club is. If you just go out there and just go, all right, we're going straight to the draft, you can be at the bottom end of the ladder for quite some time, which is what I worry about, because every single season you want to go in with hope and be like, okay, there's a chance we can win a flag. I feel
mm.
like if you're an Essendon supporter, I'm just putting myself in another big club and just thinking, you just go there and you go like, nah, we just want to scrape by. That sucks. That's the worst feeling as a supporter, I think. You need to go into a season thinking you're a chance to win a flag.
Oh, mate, you the talk about coming from a position of
Yeah,
privilege. There's
I'm
been
sorry. I'm sorry, Charlie.
There's been
Like, you know
so
what? This
many.
year, Saints, I have to admit, this year with all the moves and stuff that you made, there
Yeah,
was a feeling where if the Saints got it right, there were a chance. There was, you know, if
and
someone
I
said
and
eight,
I
they flag.
And I still think that, like, I mean, much like Carlton, that Hawks game has been the anomaly. We've been in every game. Like, you know, we were leading Brisbane with a quarter to go. Could have beaten Adelaide in Adelaide. You know, the Pies game, we had like 20 more inside 50. So it's not like there's been this whole debate about are the Saints any better off. Absolutely. Like, we are playing so much statistically, we're playing better. Our percentage is heaps better than last year. We're kicking more goals. It's just that we got injuries at when we were facing our toughest runner games, so that hasn't helped. And also, like, I just think it's not, there's no quick fix when you bring in 4 or 5 kind of starting 18 players. Like,
Exactly. Yeah,
it's gonna
that's the thing.
take time to gel.
100%, and that's the thing I had with things like with the Saints was that great players, but system like Ross is so big on system that
Yeah,
you're just not going to be able to pick it up so quickly. And if they did, that would have been scary. If the Saints picked it up to the point where they were a top 4 team straight away, I would have been like, well, there's way more upside because these guys are going to continue to keep getting better. I think the worst
yeah,
thing that happened to you guys was that Flanders getting injured because there was continuity with these guys,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden he gets injured, and you're like, okay, got to change a few things around. But I think Saints, like, I don't, if you
To be
guys can,
honest, on that point though, like Flanders, but to be honest, like we brought Flanders in as a midfielder and
mm,
he couldn't cut it. And it turns out Max Hall, I mean, the best thing about Naz going out is Max Hall and Hugo Garcia have
Hugo
really
Garcia's
stepped
been
up.
incredible. Yeah, they've
And
been great.
so what we've actually, like, if you're going to look at silver lining, this period of where we haven't been winning games, what we have been doing is getting heaps of minutes into this will be our midfield going forward. Like, everyone was sort of giving us shit over Jack Steele having a great start to the year. And like, there isn't a Saints fan who doesn't love Jack Steele. Like, we would all love to hang on to Jack Steele, but the reality is, if we're looking to the future, we have to get games into Hugo Garcia. Like, he's going to be our next kind of, defensive forward. And he's sort of he's tapered off a little bit, but he's sort of proved to this point that it was worth the investment. Flanders went to half back and was doing good, like getting good numbers and stuff. But to be honest, we've got a few halfbacks. So I think if we have to bring in like a Angus Hasty or Hunter Clark, if he ever gets his body right, like
Yeah, the
as long
biggest,
as Hunter Clark has been at St Kilda, he's been in fucking the infirmary. Like, I just don't.
and
It's like Max King.
he always looks like a player that could just go and be like, hey, he could be an All Australian if he gets it right, but he just never quite
He's,
there.
and it's always a different part of his body too. It's not like he has a chronic knee or a chronic back. It's just like he invents new things to injure. Like, it's his abdominals. Like, he's been out for almost 2 months and his abdomen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's he done? How did you do that? I don't know. It must be so frustrating
One
for
thing
him.
you have nailed is like I love Hall. I think he's been a massive find, and I think he's be very close to All Australian this year. And this is what Saints probably have struggled in recent time is finding that talent from within, and
Yeah,
then you go,
that's
hey,
right.
and then
Well, we've
Hall
been
is a
pretty
perfect
good
fit.
the last 4 years with the drafting. Naz, Mitch Owens, Windy, plus
Yeah,
development of like Sharman, Hall. Garcia was like pick 57 or
I do
something
like
like that.
Taru as well. I think Taru's going to be a
Taru,
star.
I
Yeah,
think
when he
I
gets.
think they need to play him forward. I think like they've been playing him as this like interceptor defender, but I think because we've just got no height up forward, it's a bit like the Pies really. Like, we're just undersized. Although it was
Yeah,
funny watching that Pies Dogs game where it's like the Pies don't have the biggest forward line, but even that forward line was able to monster the Dogs back line.
it was a bit. Dan McStay all of a sudden started looking like just plug a locket up there. It's just
Yeah,
on.
no, he's just manhandling
I
poor
love
Buku.
Poor Buku had to play like key position here, and he's just like, I don't want to do this, and he's just getting
Oh,
monstered. But yeah, the doggies, that's a big issue for them. Like they don't
yeah,
have. I always thought Aaron Norton, like if you move the magnets, do what the classic under 14s coach does and switch the board upside down and put Aaron Norton backline. That would be good.
yeah,
In fact, speaking of Aaron Norton, I look at Taru and I'm like, they're probably not the same built wise, but in terms
same
of
type of
their hands,
player.
they fly at the ball and
Yeah,
when they fly, it's so like aggressive, and I feel like he's got that same vibe to him, and I would love to see him up forward to see what
yeah.
happens.
The,
It all comes
the,
down to, look, if you look at Hawthorn, it all comes down to the way your team moves the ball. I mean, Jack Gunson is amazing and he's great, but the way Hawthorn are able to move the ball out of stoppages because of the way Sam Mitchell's one of the best stoppage players in the last 25 years. And he's definitely put that identity onto the Hawks. and you can see the way. That's why when you go, hey, Blake Hardwick, go forward, he can kick 4 goals in a half.
You've
But
had,
I
you've
think
had
that's
a
all comes down.
You've interacted with Sam Mitchell a bit. Like you were on the red carpet with him. Is it
Yeah,
last year when you're giving him a bit of stick about the lunch with Zach Merritt? What's he like? Because I've never met him. I just seen him from the outside. I'm like, he has that sort of steely eyed gaze of a serial killer. Like,
Nah,
what's he
he's
like to
very. I
interact
think
with?
he's interesting. So I wouldn't say we're like I'm catching up with him for a coffee or anything like that. But so
Well,
he,
you're
what
not
I've
the
noticed.
captain of another club, so why would
No,
he?
I'm not. Maybe if I did say he could, he would. So his personal account. I realized his personal private account. He follows me on Instagram, so he follows Type Media on his private account, which is cool. And I'm like, oh, that's Sam Mitchell there, seeing my story about hotball. But yeah, when I saw him last year, yeah, he was he knew who I was and what I did and stuff, which was very cool. Um, but yeah, he was very calculated. He's very interesting.
Yeah,
I think he understands. One thing I would say about Sam, from my first impression, is that I think he takes the time to understand who he's talking to and knows how to adapt. So he knows exactly like, hey, this is the stuff that I do, and I think that's why he's so good with the young players in that team, because he knows that he can't use that same approach that he uses to Jack Gunston with the young guys and goes, hey, it's my way or the highway. And that's what you kind of think when you think of Sam Mitchell, because when he was a leader, he probably demanded this level of, hey, we need to be at this level of,
yeah,
professionalism. Whereas now he's got the Ginnemans, he's got Watsons, and they're all, rascals.
yeah.
But
But
I think he knows how to speak to them, and he's very, very, very good with the players, I reckon.
I think it's all. His story is that classic underdog story of, considered too chubby and too slow to make it at the
Mm,
top level. And so in a team full of superstars, he just grafted until he got his opportunity. So I think when you go into coaching, you're going to have much more empathy for players who, have different abilities. Like it's always that question of like, maybe that's what was holding Voss back at Carlton. It's like, well, Michael Voss is just one of the most naturally talented footballers going around. So is
yeah.
it hard to him to relate to a guy who's finding it hard to get motivated or, has more fear or whatever the issue is than, a coach like a McRae or a Lyon or whatever, who were never really superstars, played in okay
Role
teams,
role
but
players
role
that
players.
understood the
Yeah.
assignment.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what
the
that's
thing that blows that up is Lee Matthews is one of the greatest coaches of all
yeah, yeah.
time. So,
But it's a different era where I think where it was more star player driven league, where it's like, the team with the most star players usually, play in the grand final, whereas now it's so system based. And I think you look at Josh Fraser, right? Josh Fraser was doing a lot of work with the VFL team, and now he's the interim coach. And I think there's no surprise that Carlton are playing this level of football, because their role players now all of a sudden have this sense of belief.
yeah,
They're probably not worried about, doing the wrong thing, because Fraser's worked with them. He probably gives them the opportunity. He believes in them. And now I'm not saying Voss probably didn't, but he probably had his favorites like any other coach does. And I think you're only as good as your bottom 5 to 10 players. And I think
yeah,
Carlton, those bottom 5 to 10 players have definitely stepped up. And now, obviously you got like the Cripps who's doing what he's doing, and everyone's going, how good's this? Cripps is doing that. But if you look at the output of what Carlton's bottom 10 players have done, and that's what Hawthorn do all the time. If you look at whenever Hawthorn go on good runs, their bottom 10 players or bottom 5 players are like, they do their part. They do what they need to do.
yeah. Do you think that, like with Carlton now, are they faced with if this form continues? Are they still on the hunt for a John Longmire or a Ken Hinkley or Adam Simpson or whatever? Or do they have to? The problem that Carlton are facing is that they've done every single version of the coach in the last 15 years, right? They've done the Messiah, your coach with a track record. They've done the guy that the players want. They've done the nerds-based statistical kind of assistant coach. So
Often.
like, what do they do now? If this form continues, it's just it's hard to know whether go, okay, well, you just take this wonderful form and give it to a John Longmire, or do you reward the guy who's got them to this point?
I don't. It's all up to Josh Fraser, right? So I think if Josh Fraser, he hasn't come out, because I think as a caretaker coach, what happens is that if you look at David Teague, right? David Teague, I don't think like he did yeah, the Teague trade. He did a great job as an interim coach, and then went in and then just couldn't cut it. And now that could
Yeah,
be due to many factors. We don't know, but I don't think when you're a caretaker coach and you become a coach and let's say you get sacked, that probably rules you out for any other coach. Like, I don't think there's been many other coaches that have gone on and done like Josh Fraser's probably thinking, hey, if I take this job and it doesn't work out well, which the track record suggests with Carlton that it might not work out well, that he might not be able to coach again. And he probably has
Yeah.
aspirations to coach for an extended period of time. And Carlton's probably the hardest job in the AFL.
Well, not only, it's the job is one thing. It's just dealing with that club and the supporters. Like
Yeah.
their greatest strength and their greatest weakness is that supporter base. Because when the sun shines, it's the warmest place in the world. But when you're in the shadows, it's just like
the Teague train, boss the boss. Then it's all of a sudden it's sack Teague, sack boss, and it happens every year.
But even with the players, like the reason Charlie Curnow wanted out so badly, I imagine the reason JSOS wanted out is like when things aren't going well, like it would be a horrible place to be. But God, and I have no love for Carlton. Like I said, grew up in the 80s where Carlton were just like terrors, and Carlton supporters were terrors. But I think the competition is better for having the big clubs up and about. Like Essendon should be up and about. The Tigers should be up and about. Carlton should be up and about. Like, not necessarily they have to all be like, premiership, but like just winning games and bringing people through the turnstiles. And because I just think I just think it's better for football. Like, we want to support this sort of expansion teams and I want GWS to grow and do well. But, we've got to honour the fact that the game, the heartland of football is Melbourne, and this is where the competition is centered around. So let's just get those big clubs stable.
Maybe this is why you curse, Charlie, because you want every club to do well, but
I do. I'm not one-eyed enough.
You want Richmond, Carlton, Collingwood, Essendon, and all these clubs to be doing well. GWS as well. You're like, hey, you guys do well.
No. When I say do well, like mid-table, win 10 to 12 games a year, just to keep to keep the gates high, keep the TV rights high, just so all the clubs can benefit. But Saints still win.
Yeah, exactly. No, look, I think even like Essendon are going through it now. The Essendon situation is so just crazy to think. Like,
Soap
what type
opera.
of time are we looking? So, like, I'm looking at this now, and I speak to Essendon supporters who are like, very intelligent people. They have they use logic for everything that we talk about. Then when it comes to Essendon, that goes out the door. Yep. Bring back Herd. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I understand this whole love and nostalgia and love for Herd, but it's like, I was watching their 150th year celebrations when they played Carlton and, they brought out the players. They literally made this guy look like the Undertaker when he was coming out.
Yeah.
They had the pyro go off and everything. And
no, it wasn't the Undertaker. They need the glass to shatter. It was a stone cold pop.
Stone cold. And it's crazy because if you look at the facts and you look at everything that's happened in the last 20 years, I think any other code would just be like, well, they would distance themselves in the space of like, hey, we don't want him to coach. We'll respect him and whatnot, but no, not a chance is he going to step back into the role.
Well, it's the thing that confuses me about it, and I get it, right? Like, there's something romantic about the Messiah and, prodigal son or whatever, however you want to frame it. Like, football clubs are emotional places, and a lot of it is built on kind of sentiment and history and all that kind of stuff. Like for a long time at the Saints, like there was talk about, Rob Harvey, who's been an assistant everywhere. It's like, give Banger the job. And I'm like, I want a coach who's been in a winning culture to come to St Kilda. Like, I don't know. I want Rob Harvey coming in. But the thing that I think makes Essendon different is that those clubs, the aura around James Hird and that era, like the baby bombers through to that 2000 premiership, like that was a pretty amazing era. Kevin Sheedy was like a genius. What I'm not sure is connecting is that I don't know that a lot of young players, like if you've, just say it's you were drafted last year or whatever, are you going to really hold James Hird in that high esteem? It would be like, I don't know.
I don't think so. Even my era.
Me and Daryl Baldock or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I know who he is, but it's not like I have any particular regard for him. So is he going to be the guy that's going to come along? Like if it was, I don't know, Jared Roughhead or like some superstar from the 2010s, like Buddy Franklin, like maybe that guy would have aura to bring to a football club. But James Hird, it seems like more of a decision for the board than it is for the players.
I think that generally the aura around him that club will create will have that. And I think that for me, I don't question that. I think the players will buy in. My biggest thing is he hasn't coached. He hasn't done anything. He's been a part of the
Oh yeah,
systems.
that
You know, that
that little wrinkle.
that little thing, and I'm like, I get he was a really smart footballer. I get that, but you have to be like the game has evolved. You think about it. Look how many rules there are every single year.
Yeah, yeah,
That and
yeah,
like you have to be on top of it. Yeah, he's on there on Footy Classified talking about a few things. That's so different to the grind of coaching, and it wears you down. And like all these coaches say, this is one of the hardest jobs because you're constantly thinking, you're constantly trying to figure out what's going on. He hasn't done that. He was a
yeah,
part of GWS, but I don't think it was like a full-time big role. He was just kind of overseeing a few things. Port Melbourne and the VFL level, he was just like a consultant type of thing, and
yeah,
he's still there.
yeah.
I think if you look at like take away the fact that he's this, he's the prodigal son. He's nowhere near the most qualified person to take this job. It's not like he was a premiership coach. Yeah, he showed signs. He didn't win a final with them as a coach. Like, I don't know where this is it's coming from. Like, he was the like, I don't it's a weird one because he's I don't think he's a proven coach. He's
Mm.
definitely not a proven coach. So, them going back to him is just it's bizarre because it's like, did you not see I think his record or win percentage was lower than, some of the
John
coaches have had.
Worsfold. Yeah.
Yeah, and I go that it just blows my mind because you're just basically getting him because you need something to latch on to.
Yeah, I guess it's
Um,
like who would you be more excited for as a Bombers fan? Would it be like John Longmire or James Hird? And it's like, well, I mean, I think John Longmire in terms of coaching, but then in terms of like, I don't know, club aura, it would be James Hird. But
yeah.
I
So
think I think
the narrative, the storyline, Herd all the way because you know what, a Herd finals win would mean more than a Longmire finals win because it just
that's
means a
true.
lot, and that's what they were talking about it on in the footy media where they were like how much their memberships went up and
Yeah,
people
yeah, I
the
heard
attendance
that.
Bird was there. But I'm like, and this is the issue with Essendon because you need to move away from this because if you don't, you're going to be in this
What?
vicious cycle. It's true though. Like if you look at
No,
every great
I
club,
100% agree with you, but it's just so funny, like, because we're saying the same thing about like Carlton as well, right? Like, there's two
yeah,
clubs that have these really proud histories, powerful clubs, really, profitable,
mm,
powerful coterie groups, and like what they sell in merch and all their associated businesses, and I imagine land, real estate, whatever they've got their fingers and pies they've got going. But ultimately, it comes down to football decisions and
yeah.
the romance of this era gone by. Like, it would be ridiculous if they did appoint Hurd and they did not put him through a very rigorous interview process like everyone else. Like, apparently, so Ken Hinkley said, well, I won't submit to an interview process if James Hurd's in the mix because like it feels like it's a bit of a farce or something. Like,
And that there you go, and that's what
it's
the
already tainting the process.
So I like to look at different case studies. So I go, Collingwood was in the shit for a while until Eddie kind of stepped in and did some stuff, and then obviously you got Mick Moldhouse that came in, and Mick Moldhouse is not necessarily he's not a really a Collingwood person, and
Mm.
then he obviously coached the Dogs before that, and then I think it was West Coast. Sorry, the
West
West
Coast. Yeah,
Coast.
won flags at
Yeah,
West
yeah.
Coast.
He won flags at West Coast, and then you look at Hawthorn. Hawthorn was struggling. They brought in Clarko, who's a North Melbourne guy and that created a winning culture. Now they obviously got Sam Mitchell. You're like, oh look, they got Sam Mitchell, but no, but they created that allowed them to do that. And then I think Collingwood's biggest flaw was like, we did that succession plan when we were we bought in Buckley, and it's like Buckley wasn't a proven coach. He had a great
Mm.
list, and it took him 7 or 8 years of just pain to finally get to a grand final. And he didn't. At the end of the day, he's still not a premiership coach.
Yeah.
So I think this whole idea that
And look at the lesson that Buckley learned from that. Now he's in the box with Chris Scott because he wants the Tassie job. So
exactly, and you
that
hear
should be
Scott Pendlebury.
instructive. Yeah.
Scott Pendlebury knows. Scott Pendlebury's learned that. He said he's gone on record. And he said he needs to move away. Like there is he would love to coach Collingwood. He said that, but he said he can't just go from player to assistant coach in Collingwood. He needs to go to other clubs and I think that's the right way. Whereas Essendon have this thing where it's like you're an Essendon person, and even if we bring Brad Scott in, like you're going to become an Essendon person, or you're going to work the way the Essendon people want you to work, and it's just like, well, Look, personally, I didn't agree with the Brad Scott decision to bring him in because I didn't think, again, he's not a proven coach. Also been out of the game for a little while as well. And
Yeah.
by the looks of it, he was handcuffed. It looked like he couldn't exactly do what he wanted to do.
Can you remember in recent memory a sacked coach doing a PR blitz like Brad Scott did immediately? Like he was fucking
he went off.
everywhere. It was
He went
everywhere.
off.
And it's like it was just crazy. It was like, I'm going to do every single panel show. I'm going to be every single
Yeah.
podcast. It's like, I mean, there's nothing that I don't know about his time at Essendon. I just thought it was
He went off. I think the
weird.
whole Zach, when he said we wanted Zach Merritt out, he said we wanted to trade for Harley Reid. You know, what it just showed me was that he didn't have the full reins. And
Yeah, it's true.
this is something this is what Mark Thompson said as well. He said the thing that gets in Essendon's way is the whole Essendon people,
The
the
power
whole thing.
brokers.
Yes, and I think that's with Brad Scott. You look at it. I feel like Ross Lyon's got his now at St Kilda. He gets to do what he wants to do. So it's like, okay, let him do. He's taken us to the grand final, and it's like, let him do what he needs to do. He'll be Alan, do your thing. So that St Kilda's chosen that way, and that's fine. And I think if you're a St Kilda supporter, you'd be happy with that because he gets to run this team how he wants to. Essendon, I don't think they allow that, and I think that's the biggest issue.
Yeah. Yeah, unless, but I guess is what the power broker is saying is, but if you give us James Hird, we'll allow James Hird to do that. Will James Hird be under the same restrictions? Because what's the point then?
I think it's a lose for them because you know what happens is that James Hird's going to come in and this team is nowhere near ready. They've got a lot of issues. They've got these players who probably have, you know, like Parrish and stuff. I don't know if they're a part of their climb up. Like, you know, they're going to get rid of them and they're going to struggle for a few years. So, and Essendon, they're not patient. Their supporters aren't patient. That's for sure. They're a crowd club. And if you hire Hurd and they have a year, which they're going to have where they're going to finish bottom 4, the sack Hurd chants are going to start. And then what do you do? Like, you know what I mean? What do you do?
Who's next?
You've got to be
Who do you go to? Got to get Michael Long. Michael Long, are you interested in coaching, please? How far back can we go?
I think it's one of the most, it's the most bizarre situation they can't, I don't know. Like, Dean Solomon looked really confused yesterday when he was doing the press conference.
Yeah.
Even him as
What
the
do you
interim
mean?
coach.
He confused by the questions or?
No, he looked confused as in he goes, yeah, I don't know what's going on. He's kind of like it's almost like he didn't even want to do this. It's like he wasn't given a heads up about, you know, hey, you're going to be the interim coach. It's like they've just thrown him in there. It's like, Dean, you're ready to go. Let's go. And he's kind of like, you can see that he was doing, he had Mackay forward. He had Sardis in there. He was trying to do these things that, you know, people have been like, do this. It almost looked like he was thrown into the job when he didn't want to do it, which is quite funny. Which is what feels like Essendon at the moment.
And Nate Caddy comes out of contract at the end of this year, doesn't he? So that's massive. Like they've got to re-sign him. He's like the one guy that you could probably build like a list around. I mean, they've got some good young players, but they just don't have the scaffolding around them to kind of to sort of protect them and give them get them to that 50 game mark without them getting pumped. Because that's what happened with North, right? Is they just got rid of too many senior players, went too hard to the draft, and then it was just 5 years of 18-year-olds getting smacked for like, you know.
One thing Essendon have over North is like, you know, they've got that. It feels like Essendon are a club that can still attract free agents, even at the worst of times. They still can somehow.
Well, you're always going to get a good deal at car dealerships in Essendon.
Yeah, there's always this, you know, the brown paper bag is always there.
100%.
You know, Zach Merritt. He wanted to leave, but there was a reason why he signed that 7-year deal. Like there was a lot being offered there, and then even this year there was talks of him re-signing again. So, yeah.
I don't know what you do with Zach Merritt now. Like, I mean, if I was Zach Merritt, you'd only want to go to like a Geelong, Hawthorn, like a contending team, like Freo, anyone like that. There's no point in him moving to a mid-table or moving sideways because he's on really good money. He might as well, and he has the relationships. But I think, you know, if a Hawthorn came knocking again, then maybe you'd look into it if you were the Bombers,
It's whether
especially with the new coach.
It's interesting because it's whether, like, if Hawthorn still have interest in him, like there's so many things that could happen, and this is what's funny. Footy's so interesting. 12 months is such a funny time because Hawthorn might just turn around and go, "Nah, we're interested in a different type of player because
Yeah,
this is the
Darcy
direction we're
Wilson or
heading to."
something. Yeah.
Yeah, they might go, "Okay, Bailey Humphrey from Gold Coast fits our list profile a little better at the moment." So I think what Essendon did was like you got Zach Merritt who's a year older now. Now
Mm.
the trade value, he's got a year less on that contract, which means he's got more leverage. They've really stuffed that up.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that too with the Saints and Marshall as well. Marshall wanting to go to the Cats. Maybe we should have gone. We should have let him go because it hasn't quite worked. The two rucks. I think Marshall is just a ruckman. We thought we could drop him in the forward line to cover King, but it hasn't really worked. So who knows if they'll
He's got.
come.
I feel like there's a now with the new rule and whatnot. I feel like there's a demand for someone like Rowan.
Yeah, for
Definitely.
sure. For
I think
sure.
Collingwood. I'd love to have Rowan Marshall now with what's going on with our situation. It's just
Well, Oscar Steen, how
yeah.
long's he out for? A year?
Yeah, he's done his ACL, and then
Ah,
Darcy
man.
Cameron. They reckon this new rule. You know what's funny, Charlie? They were saying about how this is classic AFL. They brought the new ruck rule in after the trade deadline or the trade period.
That's
So
so
I'm like,
great.
that's such bullshit that
It
they
is
wanted to
such
bring it
bullshit.
up. I'm like, that's just not fair for teams. And they were saying about us on First Crack, they were talking about, and they were saying about how maybe Collingwood may not have let Mason Cox go because all of a sudden his value goes up because you need someone, because there's obviously, like with this new rule and
Mm.
obviously no sub, you're like, okay, Mason Cox is probably someone who can probably get more games because he can play with those two tools.
Yeah.
It's wild the AFL did that. Now Collingwood's probably struggling the most because we're the worst stoppage team in the AFL at the moment in the last 5
Really?
weeks or so. Yeah, they said in the last 5 to 6 weeks, they said Darcy Cameron's numbers are low. They're just terrible, and he's not someone who's suited to the new rules.
Right.
So yeah,
Well, if it makes you
very
feel
interesting.
any better, I did listen to a podcast this morning, a Saints podcast, where they said we are average in every statistical category. we have no. Well, look, the good news is we have no weaknesses, but the bad news is we have no strengths. Just bog average
Mediocre.
in every statistical
Yeah,
category.
that's funny. So what's going on with Max King? Is he coming back? And what's
I don't know, man. Look, I don't know. I don't have any inside word. A mate of mine in the Saints chat occasionally sees Max at his gym in the sauna, and so he gives us a bit of the direct from the
I
the
thought he
Kings.
was going to have better insight than that, and I just see he's
Nah,
him in the
so he's in the sauna, and he asks him. And,
happy behavior that is.
according to Max, he's been feeling good for like the last 12 months. Just some players like. Do you remember Sam Reid at the Swans? Like similar
Yeah,
build. Their bodies just they're just fragile, and I think that the problem for him is he had so much time out of the game. Like when they sorted the knee thing out, and when I say they sorted the knee thing out, they literally just removed like I think it was cartilage, so his knee could actually function. But it'll probably mean he's going to have a shocking life after football with like arthritis in his knee and stuff. Um,
yeah.
but then he didn't have the miles in his legs, so the soft tissues is going to be an issue now because he hasn't done a preseason. So they tried to ease him back through the VFL, and to be honest, he was looking pretty good in the VFL. But the way he pinged his hammy, it was so innocuous. Like it was literally just on a lead, not even really at full sprint, reaches for the hamstring, jogs off, and they say, oh, it could be just a minor 6 weeks. That's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like
Wow.
he just doesn't,
Yeah,
Max doesn't just get injured. It's just he's out. So look, we would be such a different team if we had him in.
I think
And
so too. You look at how well Ben King's going as well, and you go, man,
well,
the upside is there, Mac.
that's the irony, isn't it? You have almost like a perfect facsimile to go, oh, this is what you'd look like if you had a player like this,
Yeah,
or almost the exact
exactly.
same player. But just in terms of
You know
like
what?
we've
Sorry, I
got
was going
good.
to say, you know what the right thing to happen would be is to let Max go and just be like, okay, mate, it's time for you to go and
It
see if
might
he can get it right somewhere else, and he'll probably get it right eventually. But it's just
Yeah,
one of those.
I think the issue is he's on a big contract. So if we let him
Mm,
go, we'd most likely be paying part of his contract. And I think considering the deals we've done with the players we have in the club, that's probably just not possible.
mm,
And it doesn't solve our problem if we still need a key forward. Like we don't have anyone in the twos that is really filling that promise. Like I said, Taru is sort of an undersized, well, not undersized, 193, 94 centimeters. So he could be a good forward option. But you look at, Freo's setup with those three talls, and you've got like Tracy, who's just a fucking beast. Like that's the guy that, is the workhorse who, crashes packs. And you've got Amos, who's your dead-eye deep forward. And then you got Patrick Voss, who's just, I guess, like a defensive forward. And they're all three big guys. That's the ideal. At the moment, we have Sharman, who's more of a third tall, playing full forward, and Mitch Owens, who's a really good high half forward and a competitive beast. But we just don't have that target. Like neither of those guys are reliable enough. Like Owens is not big enough, and Sharman's just had a terrible year. Sharman used to be the most reliable mark and kick in our team, and this year it's all gone to shit. I don't know what's happened to him.
I think he always finds a good game against Fremantle. That's about it. That's what every time I'm watching 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I'm like, how good's this?
It's weird though, like because his feature was always his kicking and his marking, and it's like they're the two things that have deserted him this year. So I don't know. Look. I'll believe it when I see it with Max King, but Saints fans know all too well. We just always have players that are permanently injured. Like, if we don't have our own players that are permanently injured, we import a player like Dan Hanbury and have him permanently injured.
I watch someone like Filippo and I go, mate, he's got a lot of upside. And another one who kind of battles with continuity he does. Yeah.
Well, he was injured a lot for his first 2 years, so I think I'm giving him a pass this year because it's like he hasn't played footy for 18 months. Yeah. But it's also his position is they wanted to turn him into a midfielder, but I think he's a better forward. I think he's just a like a half forward that you throw through the middle when you need a bit of something.
He's got a lot of X factor about him, and I think that's what you kind of need when you're trying to compete at the top. Is who's going to win games off his own brew with a 2-goal 20 possession game, and that's the kind of guy you look at. But he's one. I don't know who's in your who's managing the injuries and who's dealing with that. Like who are the trainers?
And it's odd, right? Because we've had Owens, Ryan, Naz all out with calves. The old man injury that you're not really meant to get when you're in your early 20s. So that's a concern. I no doubt we'll be looking at our high performance. But I say this with absolutely zero expertise in that area.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? It could be just a bit of just bad luck.
We're just St Kilda. I mean, that's the answer. We're St Kilda.
Yeah, like Flanders doing Achilles, that's got nothing to do with how much. That's just sometimes a freak accident.
Shocking too. One of the worst. Cheats. It's been so good, man. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm glad we could finally make this happen. I hope we've lowered the age of this old man podcast by a few years.
Millennial Media, baby.
By meeting Millennial Media. Would love to have you back on at some stage. We can find links to everything Cheats does in the show notes. We'll be back again next week. I just want to remind people, Thursday on our Patreon, we do our teams and tips. Come jump on with me. It's a lot of fun. Thursday at 7 p.m. But we'll be back again next week. Cheats, I like to sign off with a football cliche. I'll just give you a couple of seconds to think of yours. I like to say, play on, not 15.
1 week at a time.
Perfect.
We talk about coaches, and that's what I'd say.
Little footy loving dickheads, dreaming about a Premiership Cup. We love our clubs, but they never win. 2 flags in 100 years. A shit house. If you think we'll be insightful, clever, or just well researched, we're here to say that's not the case. We'll just go out and wing it. We are 2 guys, 1 cup.